All right, what's going on, everyone? Let's take a look at some updates around the ongoing war in Gaza. Now, quite a bit happened in the last couple days here. It's a lot to get into, so I'm glad you're here. Now, we're going to start with the bombing in Rafah. And as a bit of a reminder, on May 26th, Israel carried out a strike in Gaza's southern city of Rafah that, according to them, targeted and eliminated two senior leaders of the Hamas West Bank headquarters. As a result of that strike, we saw videos and pictures of fires spreading throughout this displaced persons camp that, according to the Gaza Ministry of Health, resulted in the death of 45 Palestinians. Now, looking at a map to give you an idea of the area we're going to be talking about here, starting zoomed out with all of Israel, we're going to head here into the Gaza Strip in the southwest portion and the southwest portion of the Gaza Strip where Rafah is located. Now, Rafah is getting a lot of attention right now. It's one of the main focus areas of Israeli operations in the Gaza Strip, and we've got two more details, I will say, about the strike that took place yesterday. Now, starting out, there was a video released showing some Palestinian residents recording the burning tent encampment, supposedly right in the aftermath of this strike. I mean, you can still see the fires at relatively close range. And in that video, the speaker claims that the IDF targeted a Hamas Jeep loaded with ammunition and weapons. And in this video, you actually see secondary explosions taking place in the middle of the fire, suggesting that there were weapons located in the area that these fires were burning. And then one of the speakers there talks about his fear that if they stay too close, they need to get out of there because Hamas rockets could detonate and start flying at them, suggesting, of course, that it was known that there were Hamas munitions and weapons storage locations in this general area, which is a problem because this is designed as a camp for displaced Palestinian civilians having been relocated from other portions of the Gaza Strip. Now, I want to be clear on that piece. That's kind of circulating the internet. I haven't seen anyone able to confirm the authenticity of that video. The video does look like there are secondary explosions taking place. There were also statements coming out talking about how fuel canisters inside of Hamas vehicles were caught on fire, which led to the rapid spread of this blaze across the tent encampment, which a couple thoughts there. First, it checks out in terms of making sense. A high explosive bomb to set off a major fire like this, it's going to need some sort of accelerant that there's no indications that Israel dropped incendiary munitions on Rafah, right? So you need something to be able to start a fire like this. Technically, under just the absolute perfect conditions, the awful perfect conditions, an HE bomb could start a big fire like this, but it's very, very likely that there was some sort of accelerant that helped to spread this blaze in the way that it did. Whether that was fuel or a Hamas small weapons depot, large weapons depot, whatever it might be, is entirely within the realm of possibility. That's something we addressed in the video yesterday. Now, to be clear, all of those statements and accusations about weapons depots, Hamas truck loaded with fuel, all of that is not coming from the Israeli government at this point, as far as I can see. It's circulating the internet and getting a lot of conversation, but nothing formally has come from Israel at this point. Now, as a response to this attack, the UN Security Council said that they would convene on Tuesday, later today, for an emergency session called by Algeria to discuss the attacks. In yesterday's video, we talked about just the international response, the outrage coming from multiple foreign ministers and heads of state around the world, talking about the tragedy that is this strike in Rafah and calling on Israel to abide by the decision by the ICJ, or request, I should say, to stop offensive operations in Rafah. Now, this meeting of the Security Council comes along the same time that Spain, Ireland, and Norway are set to formally recognize the Palestinian state. Pretty, again, notable on the international stage. Now, shifting to a couple other stories here. News came out a couple days ago that Hamas captured an Israeli soldier, or multiple Israeli soldiers, during fighting in the Jabalia area of the Gaza Strip. So moving back to the map here, zooming out a bit, Jabalia is in the northern portion of the Gaza Strip. It's an area Israeli forces at the start of this war kind of moved around it, didn't necessarily clear through the entire Jabalia area. Again, not every single house, not every building, not every room was search occupied and cleared during the initial phase of the Israeli operation. So what we've seen in recent weeks is Israel began to push back into Jabalia, and some of the most intense fighting we've seen in the war so far is taking place in this area. And Hamas released a statement a couple days ago saying, "Our fighters lured a Zionist force into an ambush inside a tunnel. The fighters withdrew. After that, they left all members of the force dead, wounded, and captured." We did see some video released by Hamas showing them dragging a bloody body through a tunnel, and then some pictures that I'll show here of what looks like Israeli gear taken from either the dead or captured soldiers. Now, Israel came out right away to say there's no indications that any of their soldiers had been captured. Nobody had been abducted. As far as I've seen, that continues to be the Israeli stance. Hamas has not put out anything additional to confirm any proof of life or evidence that they have any living Israeli hostages, or in this case, even dead Israeli soldiers from this specific event. Now, I did see some folks that I trust and have confidence in kind of taking both sides of this argument and assessing whether or not this actually took place or not. I saw some arguments that I'll pull up the picture here again, some of the, what are these Czech Scorpion 9mm that are being used that showed that they were captured. Those have been used by Hezbollah in the past. They're not traditionally used by Israel. If you look across any pictures of the Israeli military, that this is not a weapon system that they've been using in this war. I've seen that as an argument as to why this was staged or not legitimate. On the other hand, I've seen some folks, again, that I very much trust from the special operations community talk about how, well, just because the conventional military is not using those doesn't mean that they wouldn't be used by special operations forces in some sort of hostage rescue situation, especially moving down into tunnel networks. So again, from my perspective, we're still seeing pretty solid arguments in both directions as to whether or not this actually played out or not. And from everything I've seen at this point, Hamas is sticking with the story that they have detained Israeli soldiers, and Israel is sticking with that didn't happen. Nobody has been taken hostage. Now, we also had an incident on the southern border of Gaza with Egypt yesterday that sparked concerns that a broader war could kick off. Again, moving back to the map here, we have Israel. Looking at this map of Gaza, we have Israel here to the east. To the southwest is Egypt, not getting an awful lot of attention since the war began, but definitely playing a part for a couple of reasons. One, they've really kind of shut down any idea that any Palestinians could move into Egypt as Israeli forces move across the strip. But just yesterday, an Israeli soldier was killed, or excuse me, an Egyptian soldier was killed by Israeli fire in the Rafah area. This was a concern as soon as Israel began moving into Rafah and kind of right along the border with Egypt. And yesterday, it sounds like some of those fears came true. Fortunately, there's no indications as of now that this is going to be escalating anywhere beyond this initial engagement. So the information we have right now is that Israeli and Egyptian forces exchanged fire near Rafah on Monday. It sounds like Israeli forces fired back after an Egyptian soldier opened fire during an engagement. So there's, again, a couple different stories here. One is that Israel, the IDF, was pursuing Hamas militants in the Rafah area, and during the course of that engagement, whether stray rounds came by this border crossing or for whatever reason, the Egyptian border guard decided to open fire. He opened fire on the Israeli forces. The Israeli forces returned fire and killed him. Now, both Egypt and Israel have said that they've been in touch following this incident, and there's no indications that it's going to lead to anything further. It will spike concerns between the two and increase tensions, but again, no indications that this is leading to any sort of escalation. We also have some other information here. Some sources inside of Egypt saying that the initial investigations found that the Egyptian soldier stationed on a watchtower had reacted to seeing an armored vehicle carrying Israeli troops cross a boundary line near the border where the soldiers pursued and killed several Palestinians, and the soldier opened fire on the Israeli soldiers, thinking that they were moving too close to Egypt, perhaps, or getting ready to cross the border. There was an exchange of gunfire between the two sides. They say, according to Egypt, that several Israeli soldiers were wounded as the force fell back, and the one Egyptian soldier was killed. A little bit mixed on that. From Israel's side, we're hearing that nobody was wounded. I believe those are the reports I've seen, but definitely one Egyptian soldier killed. We've already seen pictures of his funeral. But either way, again, the bright side here, if we can take that away, is it doesn't look like this incident has led to any immediate broader escalation. There's also news coming out in the last couple days that the newly built Gaza Pier by the United States to deliver humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip had broken, was floating away, and or sinking. We've got a little more clarification on that right now. So U.S. Central Command, who was responsible for the building and deployment and installation of this pier, said that during the transportation of humanitarian aid that just began a couple days ago, right? This is a project that's been ongoing for months, technically, because it took the boat so long to get over to the Gaza Strip. Just that's how long it takes. But just a few days ago, they began offloading humanitarian aid using this pier. But they said that during that process, the dock was disconnected from the small boat tugging it, and the vessels broke free from their moorings, with 2 of them now anchored on the beach near the pier. They added that part of the dock later drifted towards Israel's Ashdod shore, while the 3rd and 4th vessels have beached on the coast of Israel near Ashkelon. And we have some videos of this showing these portions that broke away that the United States doesn't seem too awful concerned about at this point, for what it's worth. They added 2 important notes here. One, the pier is still fully operational, still fully functional, and there's no indication that the flow of aid is going to be hampered at all, which is positive. More aid flowing into the Palestinian people in Gaza. The second piece here is in some of these videos, you're going to see U.S. military personnel standing on the shoreline, and that triggered some reactions to say, wait a minute, I thought we weren't going to have boots on the ground in Gaza. We don't. Those are not in Gaza. As mentioned by CENTCOM here, these vessels floated ashore and landed in places like the Israeli territory of Ashdod and Ashkelon. But either way, from what we're hearing right now, the pier is still functional. Some minor mishaps, but it looks like it should still be in operation and may not have any impact on the humanitarian flow into Gaza. But that's all I got for now. Of course, if you're interested in this or other national security subjects, be sure to check out our Substack, which is linked in the description below. We've renamed it recently to Between the Lines with Preston Stewart because we've got some experts, analysts, researchers contributing from their area of expertise. Great articles talking about Hezbollah, Africa, China, tensions in Asia in general, Russia, the future of warfare, all sorts of things that I think are pretty interesting. If you want to, check them out in the description below. But thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.